video, I will be showing you how to take measurements accurately. I can tell you emphatically that a measurement well taken is the first step to achieving a good fitted dress. So you want to be sure that you take your measurements right in order to avoid stories that welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kayomikun, a fashion designer and tutor. In case you're new to my channel, I want to appeal to you to please subscribe and also hit the notification bell so that you can get notified whenever I post new videos. For instance, I will be posting videos on how to make corsets soon. As you can see, I'm wearing a corset dress and I want to take a 360 spin so that you can have a full look of this dress. Okay, so here we go. So you don't want to miss out on the goodies I'm going to be posting on this channel. In this video, I will be showing you how to take measurements accurately. I can tell you emphatically that a measurement well taken is the first step to achieving a good fitted dress. So you want to be sure that you take your measurements right in order to avoid stories that touch. As a beginner, taking measurements right is your first step to sewing. If you know how to cut, you know how to sew neatly, but your measurements are wrong, it will end up in tears. Did I say it will end up in tears? Okay, it won't end well actually. And also, as an experienced designer, you might want to stay glued to this video because I'm sure you will learn something new. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm using this dress form as a representation of the human body. So in the basic bodice videos, the measurements I used were center back, bust, waist, front shoulder, back shoulder, front cross armhole, back cross armhole, shoulder length, back body length, front body length, neck circumference, armhole circumference, shoulder to apex, which is the bust point to bust point, which is the apex width, shoulder to underbust, and underbust round. So if you are yet to watch my video on how to draft the basic bodice, you might want to check that out. I would link that video at the end of this tutorial. I bet you it is very easy, and I have gotten a lot of positive feedback on that particular method of basic bodice pattern. So I'm going to hit right into it. In the pattern, I used the center back, which is your nape to waist. Your nape to waist is the little bulge behind your neck on the highest point of your neck. So that is the center back. Then you take that to the waist. When measuring a client, I always advise my students to tie something, to tie a rope or an elastic or something on the waist of the person. And how do you determine where the waist of your client is? For some, it is on the navel. For some, it is a little bit above the navel, but it is usually a little bit above the navel. So it is important to take a good look of your client and know where the smallest part of their midsection is, and that will be your waist. So why we tie a rope on the waist is because we want to make sure that the waist on the back is on the same level as the waist on the front, as we are taking both measurements differently. So you take your center back, and that is your nape to waist, like I said earlier. Then you take your bust round. Also, when you want to take any circumference measurements, any girth measurements, I always advise that you stay by the side of your client. So in that position, you can easily have a view of where the high points and the low points of the body is. So standing on the side of the client, you pass your tape rule across all around the bust, and your bust is simply the highest point, the part that is bulging out the most on the client. So you take your measurements round, making sure that your tape rule is laying flat on the back. So that is the bust round, and make sure that you limit how much of your finger you have inside of the tape rule. So that's the bust measurement. Moving down to the waist, still on the same position, you take the waist measurement right on the rope where you have tied on the person, and then you take it fairly tight, not unbearably tight, just fairly tight, and that is the waist measurement. Your front shoulder is simply the edge of the shoulder before the curve for sleeve, from the right side to the left side, from one side to the other. So that is the front cross shoulder. And then the back shoulder, one you might be familiar with, is also from the highest point of the shoulder, of the end of the shoulder, from one side to the other. Moving on to back cross armhole. The back cross armhole is simply towards the underarm, where the armhole is going to end on the bodice before the sleeve begins, towards the underarm. And the same thing on the front too. Front cross armhole from one side to the other. Moving on to neck circumference. Your neck circumference is making sure that your tape rule is laying flat on the nape of the neck, on the back of the neck, laying flat. And then on the front, you just make it slack a little bit, just a little slack on the front, so that the neck will not be too choking. And that is your neck circumference. So armhole circumference, this is also called arm side. Take your tape rule all around the armhole, and then you will move it round. Make sure that it is free enough to make the arm swing well, not too tight and not too loose, as this will also be the girth, the circumference of your sleeve cap. So you don't want it too tight, to ensure that you would be able to raise up your hands freely. Now moving on to shoulder to apex. The shoulder to apex is also known as shoulder to bust point, and that is the pointy part of the bust, just on the bust point. Some call it nipple point. So you want to take from the highest point of your shoulder to the apex, to the bust point. And then apex to apex is simply the width of the bust point, which is from the pointy part of one bust to the other. So that is your bust point to bust point. Shoulder to underbust is simply from the highest point of the shoulder also to the underbust. The underbust is usually beneath the bust, is right on the bra cage, where the band of the bra ends. That is your underbust. And I always tell my students, whenever you want to measure the underbust length, I advise that you tell your clients to adjust their undergarments, to adjust their bra, but not to sound so raw. You might just want to say, please ma, can you just adjust your undergarment? So you tell them to pull up their bra strap so that the bust can stand firm. That way you can know where exactly your underbust point is. And also, before you take your shoulder to bust point, they have to do that. So take your shoulder to bust point and then to underbust after your clients have adjusted their undergarment. So underbust round is still on that point below the bra cage, above the ribs, and that is your underbust round, the underbust round measurement. So moving on to the sleeve measurement, you want to also measure the cuff of the client. The cuff is the arm round, the fattest part of the arm. That is a cuff. So you take it fairly fitted, not so tight, because you want to also again be sure that your clients will be able to move their arms freely. So you take it fairly fitted. Then you might want to take the elbow round too, but before you take your elbow round, tell your client to bend their hand just a little bit, so that after taking your measurements and after sewing your sleeve, your clients will still be able to swing their hands without having their sleeve too tight on the elbow. So folding your elbow just a little bit like this, take your elbow measurement, and then to the wrist measurement, to the cuff measurement. How to do that is, instead of measuring your cuff tight like this, if you measure your cuff tight like this, then the problem now comes to how your client is going to pull out their clothes from the sleeve. It's going to be quite tight. So what you want to do, instead of measuring the wrist round, you measure the hand. You tell your client to squeeze their hand just a little bit, and then you measure that part, the widest part of the hand, like so. So measuring your cuff like this, you can be sure that after sewing, your clients can wear their top freely. And that is all for the upper section of the body. For the lower section of the body, the measurements you need is your waist, for skirts, for trousers, for anything from the waist basically. So you might want to use the same waist measurement you took for the upper bodies, but in some cases people want their waist to be low. They don't want it on that above the navel or navel point. So you simply ask your clients where they want the band of their skirt or trouser to be, and that point is where you're going to measure for your waist. So let's say the waist is somewhere around here. You measure your waist measurement tight. You measure it tight, not unbearably tight though, but you want to be sure that the skirt is not falling off or the trouser is not falling off after sewing. So you measure it fairly tight, and then that is your waist round measurements for skirt or trouser. Then you go to the hip. Like I said, make sure you stand by the side of your client. You go to the hip, you make sure the tape rule is passing through the curviest part, the pointy part of the hips, and then you make sure it is laying flat on the front also, and then that is how to take your hip measurement. For your top length, that is simple. Just put the tape rule on the highest point of the shoulder and then measure wherever the client wants the top length to be on their body. And also do the same for skirt length. You start from the waist. Make sure that you take that skirt length measurement from where the waist of the skirt is. So you take it from the waist and then measure on the side. If they want floor length, you make sure the tape rule is touching the floor or wherever they desire for their skirt length or trouser length to be. So that is all that it is for how to take accurate measurements. So like I said earlier, I'm going to leave a link of my video on how to draft the basic bodice measurements the very easy and effective way, I promise. So don't miss out on that video. And please do not leave this channel without subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Also like this video and share with your friends. I will be in the comment section to take whatever questions you might have on this video of how to take measurements. Thank you very much for staying glued with me till the very end. God bless you. Until I see you in my next video, have a great life. Bye.